Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and stories from around the world. I'm your host, Walter, and I'm glad you're joining us today. We're starting off with a developing story that's caught our attention. Tensions are rising between Thailand and Cambodia, with the latter seeking an urgent meeting with the United Nations Security Council to address what it calls Thai aggression. The situation is complex, with both sides presenting different narratives about the events unfolding in the region. According to reports, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet has written to the UN Security Council requesting an emergency meeting to discuss the matter. This comes after Thailand and Cambodia have been engaged in a war of words, with each side accusing the other of provoking tensions. Now, we want to be clear that the situation is still unfolding, and we're working to bring you the most accurate information available. It's essential to approach this story with nuance and consider multiple perspectives before forming an opinion. In related news, the European Union and China have concluded a summit in Beijing, marking 50 years of diplomatic relations between the two entities. While expectations were low ahead of the meeting, both sides seem to have found common ground on issues like reducing carbon emissions and investing in green technology. Meanwhile, India and the United Kingdom have signed a landmark free trade agreement, which is expected to create thousands of new jobs and increase bilateral trade. The deal reduces tariffs on various goods, including Scotch whiskey, automobiles, and medical devices. We're also following a tragic story from Russia's Far East, where a passenger plane crashed, killing all 49 people on board. An investigation is underway, and initial reports suggest that adverse weather conditions may have contributed to the accident. As we continue to monitor these stories, we'll provide you with updates and in-depth analysis. Our goal is to give you a comprehensive understanding of the events shaping our world without taking sides or promoting any particular agenda. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. I'm your host, Walter. We're diving into a complex and deeply concerning situation in Gaza, where reports of widespread starvation and violence have been emerging. As we explore this story, it's essential to acknowledge the intricacies of the conflict and the multiple perspectives involved. According to recent reports, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached a critical point, with many individuals struggling to access basic necessities like food and medical care. The United Nations has warned that the situation is dire, with thousands of people at risk of starvation and malnutrition. Aid groups have been working tirelessly to provide support, but their efforts are often hindered by restrictions on access to the region. It's crucial to recognize that this crisis is not a simple issue, but rather a complex web of historical, political, and social factors. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been ongoing for decades, with both sides experiencing suffering and loss. As we navigate this story, it's essential to approach it with empathy and understanding, acknowledging the humanity of all individuals involved. We've seen reports of devastating incidents, including the shooting of civilians waiting for humanitarian aid, which has resulted in significant loss of life and injury. The international community has a critical role to play in addressing this crisis, and it's imperative that we prioritize diplomacy and cooperation to find a peaceful resolution. As we continue to follow this story, we'll be bringing you updates and insights from experts and individuals on the ground. We'll also be examining the responses of global leaders and organizations, including the United States, which has been providing significant funding for Israel's military operations in Gaza. It's heart-wrenching to hear accounts of families struggling to survive, with parents unable to care for their children due to hunger and exhaustion. The emotional toll of this crisis cannot be overstated, and it's essential that we acknowledge the psychological trauma being experienced by those affected. As we take a step back to consider the broader implications of this crisis, it's clear that a comprehensive and sustainable solution is needed. This will require a commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and a willingness to address the root causes of the conflict. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. I'm your host, Walter. We're coming to the end of today's show, but we've got one more important story to dive into. You might have been following the recent developments in Ukraine, where thousands of protesters have taken to the streets to express their discontent with President Volodymyr Zelensky's government. Now, the protests are centered around concerns about the erosion of democratic institutions and the concentration of power in the hands of the president and his chief of staff. The government has responded by claiming that it's trying to root out alleged Russian influence within the agencies, but critics argue that this is just a pretext for suppressing dissent. It's a complex situation, and we want to make sure we give you a balanced view. On one hand, Ukraine is indeed facing significant challenges in its fight against Russian aggression, and the government needs to be able to respond quickly and effectively to these threats. On the other hand, it's equally important that democratic institutions are protected and that the voices of citizens are heard. The protests have sparked a lively debate about the role of democracy in wartime. Some argue that democracies are inherently weaker in times of conflict because they're slower to make decisions and more prone to internal divisions. But others point out that Ukraine's strong civil society and democratic traditions are actually a source of strength, allowing the country to mobilize its citizens and respond to Russian aggression in a way that's both effective and legitimate. As we look at this situation, it's clear that there are no easy answers. But what is certain is that the people of Ukraine are deeply committed to their democracy and are willing to fight for it, both on the battlefield and in the streets. As one protester sign put it, "This is not the future my brother died for." That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay informed.